Again. Okay. Here we go. This is my Morris. It's a 1946 Morris Z, or that's what it started out as, but I've done a few things to it. Well, for a start, I've made most of the body, except for the grille. And it's a standard Morris Z grille, and there's a nice little bit of bling on the front of it there, which is from a slightly earlier Morris 8, which is what the Z is derived from. And I'm styling the body after a lot of post-World War II hill climb cars, trying to make it lightweight and with a suitable style. It has like a boat-shaped tail, which was considered very sporting just after the Second World War. And I want to retain the 17-inch standard skinny wheels, which sort of add to the look. Of course, getting the original type of tyres is really difficult, but motorcycle tyres will fit and they will do the job quite nicely. Probably better rubber anyway. It has a Morris Minor steering wheel and a narrowed Morris Minor dashboard. To make it more sporting, I'm setting the floor at the bottom of the chassis rather than at the top. And if you look down there under the dash, you can see the pedals. Maybe if I can just get the light a little bit better, you might actually be able to see them. There is actually from a Morris Minor, which has had the ends from a Morris Z diff grafted on so that I will be able to use the original wheels and brakes. Okay. Standard Morris Minor setup. For the brake, I've got the brake master cylinder mounted underneath the dash. Here you can just see it through there. That's the master cylinder out of a Toyota Light Ace, which I happen to have left over from building my Clubman. Just thought I'd do a little tour around my Morris. It's a 1946 Morris Z chassis, which I'm making into a little boat tail coupe. No, roadster more than a coupe, I suppose. It's not at all standard. In fact, the only thing that's really Morris Z about it is the chassis. The back here is made out of two sections from a Morris Minor bonnet, which gives it a nice shape. I've got a little bit of distortion in the top, welding it together, but nothing that a bit of bashing and filling won't fix. I particularly wanted to retain the 17-inch wheels, and they each have 6 studs on them, which means that I had to do something pretty fancy to fit a better diff to it. The diff, which you can see down there, is actually a Morris Minor diff, but I welded the ends of the Morris Z diff onto the housing, so I can use both the bearings and the brakes and wheels and so forth. And all I have to do is re-drill the ends of the Morris Minor axles, which I'll probably have to have done because it's hardened, and slightly shorten the drive shafts. But the spline's long enough that I can get away with the 20mm, so that I have to take off each side. The dash here is from Morris Minor, but it's been narrowed by about 4 inches because this is a pretty narrow car, and that has a nice look to it. I filled in the glove box opening on the driver's side. Pretty useless place to have a glove box anyway. And cut holes for two instruments. At the moment I've got a manky old amp gauge and a Smith's fuel gauge, but I will eventually put probably temperature gauge and probably maybe an oil pressure gauge. Then we move around to the engine compartment. As you can see, the car is pretty minimal. It's a lot lower and than the original Morris Z. For the front suspension here, I have retained the standard Morris Z axle, and instead of the lever arm shock absorbers, I'm using telescopic shock absorbers from a Morris Mini. Of course, this entails making up special brackets, and that was a bit tricky to get them looking right. The grille is, of course, Morris Z, but it's been shortened by about 4 inches, and that sort of keeps it proportionate. I quite like the look of this grille rather than the earlier sort of more radiator-like grille, I suppose. And of course I've bought a nice little bit of bling to put on the front. It's a Morris 8 mascot. Cost $45 thanks to eBay. It uses the standard Morris Z steering box, but it's been moved back about 4 inches, and I will have to make up a shortened steering rod to connect to the axle. But nice little thing here is that the tie rod ends have exactly the same taper as a Morris Mini, so the tie rod ends are nice and easy to get, and they'll be much better than the very primitive ones that were originally fitted. In the original car, the floor level sits at the top of the chassis rail, but because I'm making this as a sort of post-war special style car, I'm making the floor level sit at the bottom of the chassis rails. This will lower the seating position by a good 4 to 6 inches. Should make it handle better. The back springs here are from a Suzuki Sierra, but if you look closer, you'll see that there's only 2 leaves on each side, because the car weighs stuff all, particularly with the light body that I'm building on it. Of course, the engine compartment is pretty reasonable size, and I'm going to be putting an A-series Morris Minor engine in here, but it's not going to be mounted in the original position, which was so that the engine was right at the front there where that cross member is. The engine is in fact going to go a fair way back here. In fact, it's going to go so that the front of the engine is just behind the steering rod, behind the axle there. This will give much improved weight distribution, and it's sort of more in keeping with the sort of sporting pretensions that I'm going for with this car. I've built the firewall here out of steel, and made a battery tray that'll use a fairly modern but smaller battery, and I intend to run an alternator on the engine rather than the wimpy 40 watt, was it 40 amp, Lucas generator.